Continuing on with our lecture on Iraq. Here we go. Six early sites of civilization: um, Mesopotamia, Egypt, Crete, the Indus Valley, China, and Mesoamerica. First, Mesopotamia. We're talking about Iraq here, especially southern Iraq. We should put it on satellite so you can see the greenery. Not so much, but this is the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. They start up in Syria and Turkey and flow down through um, Iraq. And so we're looking at this whole area down here in southern Iraq, which is Mesopotamia, the area between the two rivers, and then Sumer was down here somewhere. This coastline has changed a lot. I think it was quite a bit farther back. A lot of that stuff is underwater now. Let's see, back to the notes. So that was Iraq, 5,100 years ago, the first writing system. Two is Egypt, the Pharaonic Egyptians. Again, we're looking at the river valley here. This is still much more agriculturally viable. The Delta, the Nile, which starts all the way down in Ethiopia, Uganda, South Sudan, and flows up through Sudan to Egypt, where it keeps the entire country alive. Egypt is the gift of the Nile. And of course, these are agricultural civilizations, so they are greatly aided by um, irrigated cropland, cropland that does not require rainfall, as we have in a lot of these places here, where you have prevailing winds from the west. Bringing moisture, and then it falls and then they grow stuff. But here we have it's totally independent from weather patterns, which is quite a bit more useful to maintaining control over populations. They're not so independent because they are totally dependent on that um, canal and the little door on the canal being open to let water in. Number three is Crete, the Minoans of what is today part of Greece. Here we have, we go north to Crete, that's Cyprus. Crete over here, this is the beginning of civilization for Greece. And Minos, and then later on Athens and Sparta, and the rest pick it up from there up onto Macedonia and the Alexandrian civilization. Crete probably collapsed due to a tsunami. This may be the origin of the Atlantis legend, um, because it was a giant wave and then the civilization collapsed. And then the Greek civilization sort of sprang up afterwards. We have the Indus Valley, the Harappan state in Pakistan. The Indus River is down here. Let's zoom out a bit. The Indus River is the boundary between uh, Pakistan and Egypt. Actually, it's coming around right through Pakistan here. Um, and, this is not the Indus River. Sorry, what did it say? Indus Valley. In any case, this is Harappan civilization. Um, and that is where we have the Harappan state 4,400 years ago. They had a sewage infrastructure there. Then we have China, the Shang civilization. We saw this back in Cincinnati. They had the terracotta warriors, or a segment of them, from China. Where are we in Beijing? All the way up here. Somewhere close to Beijing is the origin of the civilization it is now known as Shang. And then Mesoamerica, the Olmec civilization, a lot of people don't realize that is 3,500 years old. So even though a lot of the civilizations of Central America are a lot newer, all the way over to the Olmecs from down in here. It's sort of a precursor to Mayan civilization, which is also from Guatemala and Mexico. but much older. The um, Olmecs, sorry, yeah, the Olmecs were gone thousands of years before Maya and Aztec civilizations derived from them. A similar relationship of the Greeks and the Romans to Egyptian or um, um, Minoan civilization. And they had these giant stone heads, which I will show you in a future video because I forgot to draw them up. Civilizational collapse. These civilizations die when we have various kinds of disasters, ecological, social or political, or ideological. We have climate change. As ecological disasters, we have climate change, we have epidemic crop disease, land overuse, over irrigation. If you look at the what the Uzbek civilization, no, you look at the former sorry lake up here that was in Uzbekistan. I mean, this lake used to be this big, uh, and now it is much smaller due to over irrigation down here. All the rivers that are feeding it being pulled away for watering plants, and the same has happened in the American Southwest. Uh, and then catastrophe, earthquake, or something like that. Could also be a social or political cause. There could be infighting in the civilization. There could be invasion by a neighboring civilization, or there could be just it sort of grinds to a halt due to isolation. And then finally, ideological. Sometimes there's religious appropriation of resources to the detriment of the population. So everyone is devoted to keeping the sacrifices coming for the gods. And the gods demand so much sacrifice that there's not enough food left for the people, not enough time left to grow more food, or not enough animals left to feed them, or whatever, due to all of the sacrifices. And so as a result, the civilization goes into decline. These are all potential arguments that people have made, archaeologists have made, for why these civilizations fail. Population estimates. We have have a question of how to estimate the number of people in a city or a state. We can do this through the count of residential structures. So you do your surveys, you find out how many residential structures are probably there. You determine people per structure. This is all just completely trying to figure out some sort of rule of thumb. Then you can do that and you extrapolate out from those numbers people per structure, total residential structures to a total population. Sometimes people have put a number there of 10 square meters of floor space per person, but this is, of course, incredibly biased toward whichever place they first came up with that number, probably Western Europe. Where we do have houses, a lot of people don't have houses in the same way. And the house size is determined by climate and wealth. Definitely, rich people have many more than 10 meters of floor space per person, and poor people have fewer. Definitely, in warmer climates, people don't live in those spaces. They only sleep there or store stuff there, and otherwise they live outside of the structure. Ethnographic analogy. We can examine current foraging, pastoral, horticultural, agricultural residences and extrapolate to the past. Again, I think I may have talked about this before, but just to reiterate, current populations have also evolved over the past 5,000 years. Current populations tend to live in more inhospitable environments. This is foraging and pastoral people. The poor tend to be forced off the rich cropland, of course, and forced into more and more marginal environments. And then finally, bands and tribes and chiefdoms do have states next door and exist in relation to people in those states. This is the case for Native American or Native Mexican tribes around the Aztec Empire, being encouraged to develop more and more formal political structures as they interact with the state next door. Definitely in North America, as the um, um, After the 1600s, when the European settlers are moving in there, you do have more and more uh, um, transformations of the political structures to meet the challenge of having very highly organized, well-armed, and powerful invaders. Secondary methods of figuring out guesstimating populations, carrying capacity based on evidence from non-human animals. We have cemetery information. You can look at burials and try to figure out, how many people lived there based on how many were buried. Midden size, the size of the trash heap, uh, can tell you a little bit about how many people must have lived there over that period. Number of hearths, if they're cooking their food. Number of discarded cooking pots, if they have cooking pots. These are all extremely shady methods for estimating population size. Global estimates. Oh, goodness, we're up to 11 minutes. Okay, we'll come back to this.